Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
Women Today, brought to you by citywing.com for your next flight away.
So we have been talking on the show today all about diabetes. We've learned so much about it. It's been incredibly educational. One of our guests, Janet Clarke, is lead diabetes nurse, who's with us now. Janet, how many young people on the Isle of Man have diabetes?
Speaking with Pam, our paediatric nurse, recently, it's somewhere between 45 and 49 children per year. Obviously, some of them then move up to the adult services, and we have approximately about 50 young adults, so that's people between the ages of 16 to 25 who have type 1 diabetes.
And Joanne was saying in the piece that we heard from Joanne Clegg earlier, she was saying that it's one of those target groups, the sort of teenagers, that you really want to try and make sure there's enough support for.
Yes, and we certainly use as many different ways as we can find to try and encourage the young people to engage with the diabetes services, because obviously it's a very difficult time going through those teenage years anyway, and then you throw type 1 into the mix just to make it even harder. So we'll use texting, we'll email, we'll even go pick people up and bring them up to the diabetes centre if we need to. So we try and be as creative as we can, and hopefully that's appreciated by people.
And we're joined today as well by Paul Clarke and your daughter Anna Clarke-Smith as well. And Paul, you're part of this Manx diabetic group. How has it been helpful for you as a parent of someone with diabetes?
Well, enormously, just to get more information, and also to actually be part of a campaign as well to get insulin pumps for all the children on the island. I mean, obviously I've got my daughter here. It's easy to think, well, you're only going on to this to get it for your daughter, but no, you're not. You're helping other people out as well.
And Anna, we talked a little bit about this, but what would you say are some of the sort of psychological impacts that diabetes have had on you? Because it's not just about the physical, is it?
No. It varies, certain periods of time. Well, when I was going through my GCSEs, you've got exams to deal with, and every teenager going through that is stressed. But then having to deal with type 1 diabetes on top of that, can have those meltdowns occasionally. So stress affects your diabetes. It's got a knock-on effect of it will push your bloods high, or some people low, but more often it's push them high, and so you're having to deal with that. But it can because of the stress. It's not like sugar where you can deal with it and it'll come back down. The stress, it kind of has a knock-on effect over hours. It can even be a day or two. So having to deal with stress, it's definitely a big factor of it, especially now that I'm going through my A-levels. I've got those to come up in June, and it's kind of trying to work out, how I'm going to manage that and my diabetes alongside each other. So it is tricky.
Can it actually affect the way your mind is working?
Yes. In the long term, so every 3 months I go to clinic and I have my bloods taken for a HbA1c reading. And over a long time, so over a year, if those blood sugar readings are continuously high, it can have a knock-on effect on your mental state. Your concentration isn't as great, or you're distracted easily. So being like that, especially going through an exam period, it's not helpful at all. You can't concentrate on the exam paper or revising, and that's just a worst nightmare when you're trying to do important exams. So maintaining good blood sugars definitely helps, and if you can't manage the stress, then there are services there to help. So I'd definitely advise people.
And this is another perfect reason, isn't it, Jan, why it's so important that there's education out there, not just for young people, but for the teachers as well, even to learn more about what their pupils might be going through. Yeah,
absolutely. I think, as I say, paediatric team do a huge amount of work in the schools. We've also got a project working with the residential and nursing homes. So we've been out and educated all the staff, which could be non-trained staff as well as registered nurses. And we've also done an insulin delegation programme, so that means that some of the healthcare assistants have been able to assist patients with their insulin in the community, which has had a huge effect on the development of services, but also on people being able to take ownership of the job that they do. And some fantastic work has gone on out there, which means people are very proud of their jobs, and that's very important.
It is. And speaking of the Manx Diabetic Group as well, and we're talking about the issues that we can have with diabetes. At the same time, Joanne was telling me about this chap that you brought over from the Manx Diabetic Group, Sam Brand, who's a cyclist, and he says that, and he's from the Isle of Man, he says growing up he never felt his diabetes would be a hindrance to pursuing his love of the sport. He was a triathlete. In 2013 he qualified to race for Great Britain at the ITU World Championships. Last year he was invited to ride with the Team Novo Nordisk development team. So this just proves, doesn't it, that actually it shouldn't be a hindrance. It can be something you can not only carry on a normal life with, but excel as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Paul, were you there at that talk? What was...
Well, yes, and I know Sam from old because when I was more involved with charity years ago, I actually invited him to do a chat, a bit more low key in those days. But the chat he did recently was, you could see how he's matured. But one key part of his chat was the fact that he said diabetes is the best thing that ever happened to him. And that was a total positive from it. He didn't take it as a negative, and he's moved forward, and now he's part of this, which in diabetes is Novo Nordisk all cycling team. It's all type 1 diabetics. They're hoping to get into the Tour de France. It'll be the first all type 1 diabetic cycling team, which will be amazing. Because not only these guys got to put the train in, but managed to type 1 diabetes as well, which is absolutely amazing.
And what does it mean to you to hear something like that, Anna?
It was motivational. I've known Sam since we were younger, and just to hear him up there, because he does talks with other type 1 diabetes children and with his teammates, and just kind of promoting it in a positive light. And it's just kind of stood there going, yeah, I'm glad someone's doing that. He's got the platform now where he can promote it as a positive thing, not a negative thing, get the word out. And even if it's just educating someone for 5-10 minutes, it's just making them realise, didn't know that about diabetes. But he's really put a positive twist on it, and his talk was really motivational. Yeah, it was great, yeah.
Now we're joined by Julie Maddrell as well, podiatrist. Do you know, before we came on air, we were talking with yourself and Jan about actually how little time the control of insulin has been around. The idea that actually you can inject yourself with insulin. And what was the sort of time frame on that?
1921-22 was when insulin was first used.
So what did it mean if you were a diabetic before that time?
There was a very, very strict diet, and it usually meant that patients lost their lives.
And that was it? Wow.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that we wanted to talk about with you both, there are diabetics potentially listening to this. What best way can they look after themselves to just ensure that they're sort of really keeping an eye on themselves?
I think we would tend to say making sure that you're achieving at least your yearly checkup with either your GP or your specialist services. So that would include regular blood tests to make sure that your blood sugars are within the right ranges. And Anna mentioned before about the HbA1c, which is a 3-monthly measurement of blood glucose. And that obviously is, we try and keep that within a standard range so that we know that people are doing quite well, and it reduces your risk of complications. But it's also just important, obviously, to be visiting Julie's team and having your annual foot check done, and also to be having your retinal photographs taken, which is a picture of the back of the eye to make sure all things are nice and healthy, and also seeing a dietitian whenever you have those questions that you want to just be particular about certain aspects of your diet.
So, Julie, with regards to feet, what should they be looking out for?
Well, all diabetics should have at least an annual screen where we do some tests. They're very simple, they're not horrible, and we just try and establish whether there is any peripheral vascular disease or whether there's any peripheral neuropathy, which is where we get this lack of feeling in the feet. If everything's fine and you're low risk, we'll see you in a year's time. However, if you have any problems in between, you maybe stub your toe, or you cut your toe, or your toe starts looking a funny colour, or a funny, it's very swollen, it's painful, it's about, acting promptly and either getting in touch with your local podiatry service or attending the drop-in clinic, which we have on a Monday afternoon up at the Diabetes Centre. On the flip side of that, though, there are patients who I mentioned have neuropathy, so they don't actually feel pain. So their little warning signal is not there. And for those patients, we probably will see them a little bit more than once a year and remind them about things they should and shouldn't be doing to look after their feet. And even simple things such as making sure the skin's well moisturised, checking your feet, not walking barefoot, not using hot water bottles on your feet, which
really?
can cause burns that, you know, maybe go unnoticed. You know, if through the night your foot's up against a hot water bottle and you don't feel it, that can have really big ramifications. So it's about educating about some of the things that we advise patients to do and not to do, even things like wearing your socks inside out. I get some of my patients to wear pale coloured socks, so if they've got no feeling in their feet and something is rubbing, they probably will see the blood on their sock if it's a white sock as opposed to a black sock. So we have these little tricks of the trade that try and sort of give patients a little bit more empowerment to, you know, work with us as well. So
there's so much to it, isn't there?
The whole conversation has been so educational. I've learnt loads, and we've talked about type 1 diabetes, we've talked about type 2 diabetes, but what's gestational diabetes?
Gestational diabetes is diabetes that develops during pregnancy. Obviously, ladies who have type 1 and type 2 diabetes can become pregnant, and we'll support them through their pregnancy. But equally, there are ladies who can develop diabetes just during their pregnancy, which quite often will go away afterwards. In fact, the vast majority of people, it will go away afterwards. Although it does leave you with an increased risk of developing diabetes later in life within the next 10 years. So it's important that obviously that those ladies are well cared for as well during their pregnancy, because we're not just looking after mum, we're looking after baby as well.
Because that's the thing, at the end of the day, once you know what's going on, then we can come to you guys and you can help us manage these things.
We hope so, yes, that would be our aim, yes.
So just remind everyone again where they should go to get more information about this.
Diabetes.org.uk is an excellent website, and it's where we get a huge amount of our information from. But your GP and your practice nurse are very well informed people, and they can be helping you. And obviously you've got your specialist services as well at the Diabetes Centre.
Women Today, brought to you by citywing.com for your next flight away.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com. Love being Shaw. Terms and conditions apply.